As great as the hardware and games look for the Nintendo Switch 2, there's no escaping the fact that the pricing of things has been pretty controversial, with games now being $80, with Switch 2 editions of old Switch 1 games also being between $70 and $80. Games like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which are 8 years old, still not receiving a complete edition and forcing you to buy DLC separately, so the Switch 2 edition being $90 for that package for the complete experience. Switch 2 accessories increasing in price recently because of tariffs, so on and so forth. That's an area where Nintendo just cannot seem to escape negative PR. And among the most controversial decisions on Nintendo's part is to make essentially the tech demo for the Nintendo Switch 2 something you have to pay for separately. I'm referring to the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour video game. That is essentially what the title says. It is a tour of the Nintendo Switch 2 where you get a lot of information about the system as well as some mini games that have been scattered about here and there. And look, don't get me wrong, it looks neat. There's just a general agreement that this should have been packaged into the Nintendo Switch 2 in the same way that Wii Sports was on the Wii or Astro Playroom was on the PlayStation 5. There's quite a bit of disdain from the gaming community and the Nintendo fan base when it comes to this decision to charge money for this title. You can see right here from the likes to dislikes ratio when Nintendo Treehouse Live stream this game. I mean, the dislikes ratio is massive here, and comments are, pretty scathing on this front. To the person who decided this virtual manual shouldn't be a free pack-in title, I hope they step on a Lego. Super generous of Nintendo for letting us watch this for free. The fact that this isn't free is genuinely baffling. So on and so forth. When you look at free pack-ins like Wii Sports and Astro Playroom, those games just look far better, just far more fleshed out or far more fun than what Switch 2 Welcome Tour is offering here. And so charging $10 for this just feels like a huge step backwards when other companies and Nintendo itself has set the standard when it comes to games that are meant to show the capabilities of a new hardware and therefore are packaged in for free. And when you consider that for $10, you can get games like Undertale, which currently is on sale for $3, or games like Vampire Survivor for less than $10, specifically $5, or just for a little more, you can get games like Balatro for, $13.50. All games that are either, extremely iconic or are incredibly replayable. You compare that to the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and $10 is just woefully overpriced. There's just a level of audacity there that a lot of fans are not tolerating. And you know who else agrees with the sentiment that charging $10 for the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour is an awful idea? None other than former president of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aime. While he didn't directly call out Nintendo and their decision to not pack in the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour into the Nintendo Switch 2, when you look at the series of tweets posted by Reggie here, it is very clear that he is kind of directly targeting that specific decision and kind of having his say on it. It is very clear that he's kind of calling out Nintendo for what is essentially a rather greedy move. So Reggie tweeted 3 clips from an interview that he did with IGN roughly 2 years ago. These are clips meant to highlight how Reggie pushed for Wii Sports being a pack-in on the Nintendo Wii and how he pushed for Wii Play packing in a Wii Remote, and how the results were really positive as a result of this move. Again, he doesn't directly take a shot at Nintendo, but he might as well be taking a direct shot at Nintendo, given how obvious it is the timing of him posting these clips about pack-ins and how this relates to the current environment of the Nintendo Switch 2 getting backlash because the pack-in game, or what should have been a pack-in game, is being sold separately for $10 instead of what Reggie would have likely pushed for, which is to pack that into the Nintendo Switch 2. So here we have the first clip, the story of Wii Sports pack-in. Here's what Reggie had to say 2 years ago.
You have a few Miyamoto stories, and one of the ones that stood out to me was during the debate over whether or not to pack in Wii Sports with the Wii, and Miyamoto pushed back pretty hard against that, and it was like one of the biggest points of discussion, and kind of one of the bigger wins for you.
Yeah, it's an understatement to say that Mr. Miyamoto pushed back. During the development of the Wii and the Wii Sports software, again, the goal was, we wanted this system to be attractive not only to the most active players but to new players and to bring them into the video gaming experience. And we saw Wii Sports as the way to be able to do that because Each of these sports made great use of the Wii Remote.
Look, Miyamoto, you are a god in the games industry. Many call you the father of the games industry because Mario essentially kind of kickstarted gaming in a way that kind of got us to where we are today, and your creative ideas are utter genius. But you got to give Reggie the W on this one. The reason the Wii caught fire the way it did was because Wii Sports got packaged in, and everyone was talking about how fun Wii Sports was, how accessible it was. Hell, my parents, who are like the most non-gamers human beings you can think of, played Wii Sports. It was like the first time me and my parents played a video game together extensively, literally ever. And that wouldn't have happened if Wii Sports wasn't packaged in. The appeal of the Wii wouldn't have resonated without Wii Sports being packaged in, allowing people to gain free access to this software that highlighted what makes Wii stand out, what makes it special. And similarly, Astro Playroom, when it comes to like the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback on the controller and what that does to the gaming experience, it was something that I thought was kind of neat and cool when they first announced it, but it wasn't until I played Astro Playroom that I realized just how that the sensations that these features provide genuinely add to the immersion and genuinely make for like a cool addition to gaming as a whole. And then with the Switch 2 Welcome Tour, not only do you get to learn fun facts about the Switch 2, but the mini games that highlight the features of the Switch 2, all of that goes a long way in making people fall in love with the Switch 2 and like helping them understand what makes Switch 2 stand out and why its new features and capabilities are so neat and what kinds of gameplay the features open the console up to. And it just allows people to understand the console better. It allows people to see the appeal of the Switch 2 better if something like that is packaged in. So charging separately $10 for that, that's going to be a flop of a software. There's just not going to be a lot of people who are going to be interested in paying $10 for a tech demo that isn't good enough to be like a separate standalone game release that you have to pay for, but is good enough to kind of package in for free and highlight the appeal of the Switch 2. And so it's just a missed opportunity. On top of the fact that with Wii Sports and Astro Playroom having set the bar, now charging $10 for something like Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which feels like an inferior product to the aforementioned games, it just feels greedy now in the modern day eyes of gamers. Here we have a second clip where Reggie talks about how he pushed for Wii Play, including a Wii Remote, for that being packaged in.
On a subsequent visit to Kyoto and the headquarters, the team showed me software that would become Wii Play. So a collection of mini games, and those themselves were fun as well, but they didn't have the connective tissue that Wii Sports had with all of the experiences. So then I proceeded to piss Mr. Miyamoto off again by suggesting that we bundle Wii Play with the Wii Remote. And he was not happy about that either.
And then in the last clip, Reggie talks about the end result of his suggestions to pack in some stuff to add value to the package, but also include software that actually allows people to understand what makes the console itself so special and so unique compared to the competition.
In the Americas and in Europe, Wii Sports was packed in with the Wii proposition. It was not in Japan, which created a bit of a test market. And, it was obvious that in the markets where Wii Sports was packed in, that Wii became much more of a phenomenon. Wii Sports itself became much more of a phenomenon. And we did pack the remote with Wii Play, and I think it became the fifth best-selling piece of software in the history of Wii.
Yeah, look, Reggie hasn't always had the best ideas or said the best things. Like he said some things that are questionable here and there, or made decisions that are questionable here and there. But when it comes to that aspect of packing in Wii Sports and packing in a remote with Wii Play, it was a stroke of genius. It took Wii to the stratosphere. And with Switch 2, while I don't think the packing in of the Welcome Tour is what would take it to the stratosphere, it would help just add a little more value to the package. It would help allow, more people to kind of be able to explain what the Switch 2 does to those who may not be familiar with the console. And it would just prevent a lot of negative PR that is associated with charging $10 for a game that clearly could be packed in. Now, the crazy part is that Reggie Fils-Aime is not the only former executive of a major gaming company to speak out about the situation. Shuhei Yoshida, former PlayStation executive, also just expressed bafflement that the Welcome Tour isn't being packed in. This right here, this headline from Insider Gaming says it all. He said, I just don't understand what Nintendo's doing here. This was from an interview with Easy Allies. Shuhei Yoshida came on and he was asked about what he thinks when it comes to Nintendo's decision to not pack in the Welcome Tour. Here's what Shuhei Yoshida had to say.
What do you think about this decision to charge $10 for this game?
I just don't understand. You want everyone to experience that, right? To have a better understanding of the Switch 2 and become a fan of the system.
We joke about it easily. As I joke about it. I call it like peak greedy Nintendo, where they are getting back to like historically some of their old ways where they're charging a little bit too much and charging for too many things. And I think as more information is coming out that certain things are costing this, and especially like with the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour costing as much as it does and not being included, do you think it's these small missteps could add up?
People, pay or not pay $10 for the Welcome Tour, and people who decide not to pay $10, they don't know what they missed, right? So I don't think that will become a backlash. I think it's just an opportunity loss for Nintendo. I think in a positive way, maybe Nintendo is a big fan of preserving the value of software. So trying to, maybe they are against this free-to-play kind of, it's kind of free-to-play as a start, but
it's free to play, but without microtransactions.
A lot of money for just card or something. They are trying to, at the same time, protect the value of software, and at the same time not to overcharge in a way of digital, like gacha or like that.
Well, first of all, Nintendo has done like gacha, and they've released games on mobile that do have gacha elements, so that argument goes out the window. But the main thing is, I do agree with Shuhei. Like, it is ultimately a missed opportunity, and I'm all for preserving the value of software, but when it comes to something like the Welcome Tour, it is not just like this standalone video game. It is so tied to the Nintendo Switch 2 and the fact that it is a tutorial of the Nintendo Switch 2, that to separate it from the Switch 2 and make it a separate product and not something packaged in, especially when it has the potential to showcase to people how cool this console is, it is just ultimately a net loss for Nintendo, on top of the fact that what this has ultimately caused is just a lot of negative PR for Nintendo, on top of all the other things, all the other negative PR that they're dealing with because of game prices and accessories prices and, certain physical media releases, the ones that are labeled as game key cards, not being actual physical releases because they do require some kind of digital download. So it renders that physical card pointless, among other things. The fact that Hall effect sticks aren't being included and Nintendo not reassuring that Joy-Con drift won't be an issue anymore. And you pair that with Joy-Con pairs now costing $95 because of the tariffs. So it all just kind of adds up. And while I don't know if that will necessarily destroy the Switch 2's ability to become successful, because ultimately, if you have great games on a console, it will sell, and Nintendo is fantastic at making great games. It doesn't change the fact that from a PR standpoint, Nintendo could have had just a smoother kind of transition into the launch of the Switch 2. And there's the potential of all of this negative PR potentially negatively impacting sales, especially when the Switch 2 ecosystem has become so expensive in myriad ways. And when prices go up, demand goes down. And when something like, the Switch 2 Welcome Tour isn't packaged into the Switch 2, there's just a bit less incentive for people to get the Switch 2 because the value of that package has been diminished when I think this could have been a really great way to kind of justify the price point, the $450 price point, just a bit more, and give people something to do if they can't afford to pay, freaking $80 for Mario Kart World and whatnot. It would have just been such a great entry point. At least there's some kind of game to be able to play, a bunch of mini games you can partake in that introduce you to the capabilities of the Switch 2. And it would have just been a win-win to everyone. Well, it feels like could have been a home run of a launch that then they could have rid the wave of. It just feels like that has been lost. And so Nintendo will have to kind of work hard to make sure the games are so on point that people are willing to overlook some of these questionable price points and business decisions on Nintendo's part. In the end, only time will tell how all of this will play out, but this is kind of one man's take and also the take of former executives like Reggie and Shuhei Yoshida, both of who have been instrumental in shaping the success of their respective companies, Nintendo and PlayStation. When you've got two juggernauts like those saying, "Oof, I don't know about that one, Chief," maybe you fucked up, Nintendo. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation surrounding the Welcome Tour and what both Reggie Fils-Aime and Shuhei Yoshida had to say on that front and what your take is on it. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.